sides to every coin. You know, I think the movie's more of a reminder rather than sort of like a statement or like any definitive commentary on it. It's just a fairly objective depiction of what we learned about the place.
Did you, when you learned about the place, how did you learn about the place in order to play this role?
There's a lot of reference material. I know that Pete initially started writing the movie because of this one interaction in a movie called Inside Guantanamo Bay. I think it's like a Discovery Channel doc, actually.
I think so, yeah. It was like, I saw that doc, it was really cool. It got me thinking about what that interaction is like. And as you start doing some more research about, you see in other docs and things, like, you see the reality of life down there is very boring, you know? And just, it was the idea of seeing that at the bottom of this, like, you know, of this well of all this political stuff. And to me, the political stuff, it's all abstraction. I mean, it's really, there's no real reality in politics. It's just people's opinions about one thing or the other. And so I wanted to try and cut through that and look, like, at the end of the day, like, what's happening on the ground level? You know, what's the boots on the ground kind of thing? Yeah, like, who's there? What do they do on a day-to-day life?
Yeah.
I have the old saying, which is like, when the elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. And so I want to make a film about the grass. It's like, here's a soldier who has no real political slant. There's an emotional slant because they've been told, like, this is your enemy.
God bless America.
Yeah, exactly. And the detainee is like, you know, hey, you're holding me captive, so like, I'm obviously, you know, aggressive towards you.
I don't like you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a very natural situation.
You know what I mean? What? Like you.
It's like the Stanford prison experiments, you know, where if you put someone into the role of a jailer and a prisoner, like, they will take on these roles. You know, it will just come about by the nature of that position that they're in. So I think from the beginning, you know, this is why, you know, Kristen's so good in the film and why we worked on this character a lot, is that we wanted it to be about people and politics. And then along the way, of course, what I like about the movie is that you get to bring along a little hint of some political ideas. We're not telling you what to think. It's not a message movie. But along the way of this very personal, intimate character journey, you'll start to think of these other things. That's kind of like a sneak it in there.
Well, there are other ways that you snuck things in, and I think the scene, that the pre-frequent flyer moment, when there's one guy, one of the soldiers, Amy's friend, says, "Wow, how cruel!" You know, the idea, and the colonel or corporal rather says, "What do you mean?" And then he immediately stops, or is it later? And I think it's a cafeteria scene where the same soldier says, "Hey, they did 9/11."
Yeah.
That's a sentence. That's the whole politics.
Yeah.
They did 9/11. It's very simplified. There's nothing more, you know, black than that. They did this, and that's why they're here.
Well, yeah, I mean, you need serious justification to tell yourself anything to get through something. And
well, it's interesting that you say that, because the film is also very much about dehumanization on both ends, right? I mean, the guards.
Yeah, I mean, it's about these characters like we're talking about. It's like the idea of like these two small people in the bottom of a giant machine, you know? That's why so much of the movie is just about these institutional mechanics on both sides and how that dehumanizes them. But like you were saying, Kristen, about, you know, when you find yourself in this role or under this pressure and surrounded by these things, you're going to tell yourself all sorts of things. You're going to build, yeah, and you're going to build these ideas in your mind, and in a way you'll be shaped by it as much as you. It's not much the ideas you bring in there. It's like that place will change your ideas and, you know, create these things, good or bad. But the other idea was, I think, is to surround Kristen, you know, Kristen being her character being the vessel for the audience to see themselves in, is to surround that character with all these different opinions. That's why we have, you know, one character that eventually finds a simplistic answer. They did 9/11. We have an aggressive soldier. We have some other soldiers that are a little more chill and are just like, yeah, this is kind of messed up.
And they play solitaire.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's how you spend your day. You play solitaire.
Exactly. I've always been fascinated by. It's not evil, but the banality of evil is just fascinating to me. It's just like, yeah, we're doing this like really hardcore thing down here, but it's like, yeah, we're also just doing a job. It's like a dumb job. I clock into my low-paying job, and that's what I do.
But the dehumanization idea is so interesting from the perspective of the guards. The commander is filled with such self-hatred. You know, he's telling you, "I hate what I do. This is not what I became a soldier to do." And I think Amy has this really great moment toward the end when she says, when he asks her, and she says, "You know, I wanted to do something important." and it's very self-referential because she knows this isn't it. This doesn't appear to be very important.
Yeah, weird difference between those two people. I think she wants to lose herself. She wants to take the individual out of it completely, so she doesn't have to look inward. So she doesn't have to acknowledge things about herself. She doesn't have to exist. She just wants to be a part of a larger piece. I think that he doesn't like it there because he wasn't able to. There's no glory in it, you know. Like I think like for very different reasons they don't want to be where they are. But
yeah, it really raises an interesting point though, because they both are going for different things. It's, you know, when you're faced with a situation like Gitmo that doesn't have a black and white answer, it's so much easier to be like, wow, the world's complicated. I need to find some dogma to hold on to,
yeah.
And I'm going to do that, you know. And it's like I'm going to cling to that, and my life's a lot easier if I just think it's this way.
Yeah.
And I think very much that's what the character was wanting to do. But Payman is interesting. His character Ali is like, he wants to not be just another face in the crowd. He's trying to hold on to that individuality and deal in the shades of gray, because he's being cast in a role of terrorist, whereas like Amy wants to be that soldier.
I think Cole would want, and it sounds silly for me to say, but I think that she would want to be like, what's his name in the movie? Like Payman's character.
Oh yeah.
All she wants is to be like, they did not.
Yeah.
Oh, please. If I could believe that, my life would just be golden. It's exactly what I want to be able to get behind. But and that's why she signs up for it too. It just takes the thinking out of it completely. And then that's what I really liked about the movie initially, was that you have someone who's just trying to turn off, and then there's just this slow and steady, tingling vitality. You're just like, I'm actually not dead, and oh my god, I can't accept this.
It's interesting, yeah, like a character that's trying to, in a way, fix herself by like, I'll do this. It's like joining the priesthood or something. It's like that'll give me
that'll answer
everything,
yeah.
And then you realize halfway through, just like, oh man, like you can't run away from yourself. You are who you are, you know. It's like you can try to sublimate that and restrict it and give these kind of confines to live in, but at the end of the day, like it's cool seeing the character bubble out of that and realize, and that's cool. It's part of like that growing up thing, you know, realizing. I mean, the movie is very much just kind of like I was talking about it as a quarter-life crisis movie, you know. It's university. It's like, you know, instead of going to college or whatever, a lot of these kids they join the army instead. That's the path for them. And so they have this awakening, this enlightenment happens in that messed up, weird situation.
Well, you know, she acknowledges early in her first encounter with Ali that, you know, she's not that sophisticated in any way. And there's some sense of her own self-growth, that there is actually an education of Amy Cole transpiring. She is a very different person, and she is traveled away for the first time from this small town in Florida. This is her first...
He is the ultimate catalyst for her. It's like you go there expecting to turn off, and all that happens is you meet someone that pulls out. You know, like after she meets him, she's genuinely desirous of being smarter and being somebody who wants to acquire knowledge and wants to travel and all that. And before it was like, no.
No, I think you're right. I think that moment when he's playing soccer and she jokes about university, I thought that it meant that she was going, I want to be like this. I want to be well-traveled. She's later, maybe I'll travel to Germany.
Right.
Why, I could have gone to college. Maybe I should now go to college. He rocks her world in the most really touching way.
She needs to go to Guantanamo and
right.
befriend a detainee. Like, listen, it's so silly.
It is. Well, you know,
what's that cool thing about, like, you know, it's like a movie isn't a love story, not in any romantic way.
I actually thought it was.
Well, it is, but it's not. It's not
forbidden love.
But it's not. It is a forbidden, but the way I feel about it is, and this is why I like to set it, is it's not romantic love. It is that it's not agape. What I don't know what the word is. It's that love of humanity.
Yeah.
It's something that transcends, like, it's not about sex or.
But it's a human connection.
Yeah, to seeing someone say, I love you as a human being. And that's what I really loved about it as well. It's like, you know, yeah, it's a guy and a girl. You expect there to be this, you know, this sexual undertone, but it doesn't exist in this. You know, it's not about that. It's bigger.
Yeah, it's so lonely. But it's not. I don't think it's not just because they're isolated and because they see each other every day. I think, you know, it would be really interesting to take these two characters and imagine them in a different circumstance. I think they would both be just sort of as closed off to a certain extent. And, you know, sometimes the most precious solace you can find is in someone who, or is just from a place that is unexpected and sort of, I don't want to say inappropriate because now this whole like romantic thing's made it weird, but it's.
Hey, she signs the book, Love.
Oh my God, dude, we love each other.
I know. I'm just saying, she could have said in friendship. She could have said, hope to see you again.
You're right, it is love. I guess what I'm trying to say.
She's making a connection to him that's deeper than a friend.
It's deeper than romance too. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm interested in that idea because so often you see in movies just like a guy and a girl. I told you this. I have this theory of just like in a movie, anytime like people start fighting or have sex, I kind of start to lose interest because then the tension's gone. It's just like, oh, now they have sex. So now we're in love now. We have a scene where we have sex and there's a slow shot and we're like, oh, I love you. It's like that. It's not life. Like it's like that's not real love, you know, not in a romantic sense or in the other way. So I'm more interested in, you know, the kind of, I don't know, just like a little bit different. And again, a little like just doing unexpected.
It's very powerful and very primal. I mean, I was thinking about this again, and Edinburgh was here. She's a film historian, but you know, this is very powerful. I know these are two very disparate movies, but I was thinking about, you know, King Kong has this very powerful connection. They make a connection. Driving Miss Daisy does the same thing. People don't, they make a connection, and there's a human touch. And in this case, there really is a human touch. And those movies actually also have very similar moments where there's actually hands on hands that shows you how powerful to reach out. Ali says at one point, well, you know, I was told that I'm actually, right? So Peter says, well, you know, he says, right? And I say, well, that's true. We don't have to take him at his word. We don't know what he did. We only see him in the very beginning. It doesn't mean anything. He's watching television. We know nothing about it.
He's watching television and he has a bag full of cell
And he has a ton of cell phones.
Right, there's a ton of stuff. Yeah, but you know, that's actually one of the interesting things. You know, we were told by two American presidents that we couldn't dismantle Guantanamo Bay because there was too much evidence. There wasn't enough evidence, and the people in there were too dangerous to release. That was the term of art. Too dangerous to release. And Ali doesn't seem too dangerous to read. Yes, he has all of these cell phones. We don't know what this really means. I'm wondering, would this have been a different film had we known more about Ali and what might have brought him to Guantanamo Bay? Remember, in the end, there's only 150 people in Guantanamo Bay. When this is taking place, there's roughly the last 150. That's what we're talking about. And many people from Yemen and the army, we were told these were too dangerous to release. The movie doesn't give us a sense of that. Would it have been a different movie experience had we known more about Ali, or even if he wasn't, what those next other guys in the other cell? Or does that not matter for this particular film?
It changes entirely, yeah.
Oh, yes, I mean, actually, it was a film.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it didn't matter. The question I wanted to ask, again, it's about questions, is even if he is innocent or if he is guilty, like even if he is guilty, the way we're holding them is that's still right. Even if we do, this is why there's no like hardcore torture in the film. And then the other reason about all these things is because it'd be too easy. If I just told you he was a bad guy, well then it's like, oh, then the terrorists are bad guys. Okay, then Guantanamo's right. Or if he's innocent, then it'd be like, oh yeah, you know what, the army is wrong. We should totally close Guantanamo Bay. But you have to ask yourself, put that aside for a minute and just look at the fact that we have a guard stuck down here doing this job that they were never supposed to be doing in this terrible situation. And we have these detainees held down there, in almost all cases, with no proper trial. With the writ of habeas corpus is totally suspended. And so you have to ask yourself, even if we have the greatest facilities down there and they're being treated super well, is it still available?
Which is, again, what they said. They said not enough evidence and too dangerous to release, which is essentially saying we're in the a la carte menu when it comes to the Constitution. We're not applying it to these people. It's just not applying to them. Habeas corpus, not applying to them. Nothing that's applying to them. because we don't really have evidence other than a lot of cell phones. And by the way, many people don't realize this is how common this was. You know, you have a lot of suspicious telephone calls to a cousin who knows someone in Al-Qaeda. It doesn't mean anything. You call them about soccer. It could be anything. They just know that there were a lot of phone calls. And then the idea is, well, we just couldn't take a chance, so we just held them forever. But, you know, you chose not to show waterboarding. Is that in your mind the same idea? It's the reverse of showing them as guilty? Because it's too easy. If you show waterboarding, it all of a sudden shifts the focus and makes this appalling. It's appalling.
You know why? Because then the film becomes very. My fear was that the film would become manipulative, and I think from the beginning we didn't want to make a film that's trying to manipulate the audience. And more importantly, there isn't propaganda. There's so much propaganda about what's on the If you show someone getting waterboarded, like that's propaganda. Like it's making a very obvious statement that this is crazy. And also in the research that I did, like yes, I'm sure some people are still getting treated very wrongly, but like what fascinated me was that there's a handful of these guys down there, and they're just sitting there. It's like, in the beginning, that's why in the beginning we have this montage to allude to the fact that in the beginning, when they first showed up there, it was the Wild West. People were getting beat, it's crazy, and it would be wrong to not at least,